People usually use that for, Canine Hybrid, I know, used it for Velociraptor, space alien thing she's making.
Oh, wow.
It's an original character from one of her stories she wrote for like school.
Okay.
And she pretty much worked on her.
Alrighty. I think we will
People
be in.
have those, like-
Cameras ready?
Yes.
People are
And
gonna
she's
record.
usually like,
Yeah.
out of my height, I could call her a person.
Say hi.
I'd like to welcome you all here to the
Yeah.
Resin Fiberglass panel.
Flexibility of the neck here,
Um,
on the
think so.
inside the breast.
We're gonna start out by talking about this stuff right here. This here, Bondo resin. It's a polymer resin, basically. It's endothermic with reactions. What you use this for, you can use it for car repair, you can use it for boat repair, costume making. That's really the reason why we're all here. And I'm gonna show you, teach you a little bit about it. Essentially what you do is, when you wanna mix this stuff, you need to get one of these. It's basically a little container. It can be anything. I got this like at Walmart for like $1. Opened it up, poured it in, and mixed it up, adding the catalyst. Let's see if I got the catalyst around here somewhere. Oh boy. Here we go. Essentially, a little clear liquid. You're gonna have to follow the instructions on here. Generally, it says you're gonna need about 7 drops per ounce. Usually you do this by weight, so you look it up on here. It's pretty easy to follow. And then you mix it. That's the general theory before applying. Now, before you do all that, you're going to make sure you have at least some rubber gloves on, and some type of respirator, because the fumes from this actually can cause long-term damage. Essentially, you'll feel a little woozy, a little buzz, maybe even high for a little bit, and then you'll think it's over, but literally that could actually cause respiratory problems, it can cause brain problems, literally just the decay of cognitive functions. And so you really want to be prepared for working with this stuff. Try not to have kids around it, or small animals, or large animals, or anybody really that doesn't have any type of mask on.
Anything that has a respiratory system.
Yeah, anything that can breathe, essentially. Do it if you're gonna do it in like an area that has a lot of neighbors, a lot of people walking around. I know sometimes you live in like maybe an apartment complex or something like that. Try finding a place that's like downwind of that like goes off, the wind will blow off into nature or something like that, or where there's nobody, maybe like an industrial park or something like that.
Fuck you, nature.
just try to be like aware of your surroundings when you use this stuff. There's 2 types of resin that are usually commercially publicly available. This you can get at Home Depot for about like $30 to $40 for this size of can. You can also go to Michael's, Joanne Fabrics, AC Moores, and you can get a smaller type of resin, probably about this size. And it's a clear acrylic resin instead of this polymer resin. And essentially that stuff is used for more over casting stuff such like this. This is actually, this is some orgonite that I made on a whim the other day. I'll get into that later. And essentially you want to use that for casting. You don't want to use it for making this stuff. I've tried it in the past. I've tried making visors with it. It warped. So don't use it for that. Use it strictly for casting. This stuff also, I'll show you how to apply this essentially. After you mix it and add the catalyst and stuff like that, what you're going to want to do is take whatever mold you have. Like I use Peppercura models. If some of you here might have heard of them. They're essentially papercraft models you design on a computer using 3D modeling techniques. And you print it out and assemble. And what I do is I take the Peppercura model and I apply it to the inside, multiple coats. This had about 4 or 5 coats to it, so I wanted this to be really hard. The more coats you add to it, the harder it will be. And once you get that base coat of it down, then you're going to start wanting to apply the fiberglass cloth or matting. Now the fiberglass cloth is a lot easier to work with just because it's like cloth, like literally. Yeah, the fiberglass matting though, it's like a lot of prickly stuff going everywhere. You're going to want to wear like actually work gloves with it because you might prick your hand and get a piece of fiberglass in there, and that could cause some bad times of going to the hospital. This stuff is really great to work with. It's about $4 at Walmart. You can pick up there. This is about 8 square feet, so you can get a lot done with this. And after you get that first base coat of resin in there, you're going to want to apply 1 layer of this in there. And then you do another layer of resin, and if the harder you want it to get, you can keep applying more and more to it. It's really up to you. Although that being said, it'll get heavier when you do that as well. So if you want to have like a head prop like this is about like 8 pounds. You might want to go less with that if you're going to build like a fursuit head and you'll be wearing it all day. So I'll show you this as well. This is another thing I made. It was a cast of my head that I rendered out. And after applying the resin and the fiberglass to the outside of it, just because I wanted to make this a dummy mold, I applied this stuff called Bondo body filler. Essentially what it is, it's basically kind of like this, except it's more a dent filler. You can use it to fix dents on cars, boats, whatever you can dent. And essentially you just fill in the body with it like here. Wherever these little circles are, that was a little place that needed a little extra, so you mix it up the same way. It has its own catalyst, you mix it, and then you apply like so. There's also a combination of mixing Bondo body filler and body resin called Rondo or Mud. I used it right here. This is essentially the mixture. It's very quick flowing and it hardens fast, so you want to make like a reservoir. That's what I did here. And you can pour it in there and it'll fill it. And you can also make really nice smooth curves or curved surfaces with it when it hardens. Other than that, it's really hard to work with. You got to really practice with it. This is just a big practice thing I wanted to do. After that, after you got your mold or your prop, you can either paint it, which is what I did with this. I did a bunch of layers of just regular brush, black spray paint, and then I dry brushed it with silver, and then I did the horns with another like copper, copper as a base, and then like a tan for the outside of it. I want to redo these because it doesn't look good in my opinion. But if you don't want to paint it and you want to make multiples of the same thing like I did with this, you can take the smooth cast 45 Delta semi-rigid plastic casting materials. It's also, actually this is the stuff it is, the 45 Deltas. Essentially what you do is you pour it, you mix this in 2-part compound, you mix it in a cup like this or whatever you want to use depending on what the size of your project. You basically pour it in multiple layers. This was actually about like 6 layers that I poured over this thing over a period of a couple days because this stuff takes forever to dry. And then after you wait and it cures, you can essentially pull it off and you get this thing, which is a flappy sack-like thing. And essentially that's your mold. So what you do after that is you can apply another layer of resin over it, and so that can make an external cast of it so it keeps it rigid instead of just flopping around. Because you don't want to have this flopping around while you got some resin or plastic inside of it, and it's going to warp your mold and everything. So I don't have any examples of that at the moment, but this is what you do with that. You could also, this is basically the plastic you could use for it. It's basically a lighter version of this right here. I got it from smoothon.com. You can get a lot of stuff there. They have a whole lot of tutorials on YouTube, and basically I've gone on them. When you're doing this, you might also have some plastic matting on the floor if you're doing this indoors or outdoors. I suggest doing it outdoors because of the fumes from that stuff. This right here was another casting I made with the Smooth On. It's essentially a large rectangle that I encased a can of Mountain Dew in with that clear resin because it was a going away present to somebody. And you can essentially just pull it out and basically it looks like a big old ice block with a Mountain Dew can inside. It had a lot of bubbles in it, and the problem with that is it wasn't under any type of pressure. When you do casting with a resin, you might want to get like some type of pressure chamber. You can go to Harbor Freight and pick up a paint can stir. It'll be a big metal container that you can actually apply some type of engine to it, and you can modify it so that it basically sucks all the air pressure out of there, and it'll cause the bubbles to rise. Or you can do the same thing, adding air pressure into it. It's the same type of reaction. And that can make cleaner casts. It can make them see-through casts when using the clear stuff. This here is kind of an example of it. It has the air bubbles inside it, although it's kind of a plate, you can't really see it. Let me see what else here. Getting resin off of you if you don't have any protective equipment on can be really hard because you might not notice it at first, like, oh, I feel a little itchy somewhere. I got this resin on me, let's say. Oh, okay, it's itching. About 10 minutes later, I'm feeling a little warm on my arm. What is that? Oh, I just noticed I got something sticky in my hands. Oh shoot, I got the resin on me. And then right about that time you realize it's gonna start burning you. So it's kind of not good to get on you. That's why I would suggest wearing something like this, or at least wear like a long sleeve shirt that you don't care about. And then basically what I use after finding a long time of mixing stuff, these are 2 of the ingredients that I use to remove resin from my hands. I use the Goo Gone, the Fast Orange. It could be, there's a lot of products of this. This is just one of them. Like they got orange soap, orange lava soap, anything really with the pumice inside of it. They'll say it right there on it. That'll work. You mix that as well with some, what's that stuff that, shoot, what's his face? Billy Mays used to sell
OxyClean.
You mix these with some OxyClean and some tequila or sake or any type of alcohol. That's generally the alcohol I have at home. Take a shot of it before I mix it with my hands and this stuff. And then it actually just
Don't
comes off
take
with
the
some
shot when it has the orange in it.
I mix them all, rub it off, and after a good amount of scrubbing, it'll be weak enough that I can take like a brush or some washcloth that I don't care about and rub it off. But if it hardens on you and it doesn't burn you that much, I mean, you could literally just peel it off later. I would suggest going against that because that stuff can actually go through the skin and enter the bloodstream, and that can cause a whole bunch of other problems that you don't want. So just be really careful when working with this stuff. I've found out multiple times. I'm lucky I don't have any permanent burns. I've got a lot of hot glue burns from making stuff like this, and that's really that. What else do I got to go over here? Usually when your resin is drying and Bondo is drying, let it cure for up to 24 hours because it can still be tacky. You can still touch something on the model and it'll shift and bow or warp. I had a problem with this part right here. It actually cracked on me because of that, because this stuff has an endothermic reaction when you mix the catalyst and the resin. So it gets really, really hot. That's why it burns you. And so, I mean, that's kind of obvious, but it can warp stuff. I mean, if you use hot glue to put your models together like this, I use the high temperature melting hot glues, so you gotta kind of go with like 400 degrees of a hot glue gun to melt this stuff to apply it. The resin, it can get up to that high, but that's if you mix a lot of catalyst. You really have to be careful when mixing your catalyst, because that can make or break what you're making. Even on here, if you guys want to look at here later, there's some cracking along the edges. That's because I added too much catalyst, and it might fall apart eventually, who knows. That was just an experiment that I was doing, and that's really that. And
question: if you add too little catalyst, will it never cure, or will
it'll take forever to cure? I've done that once just because I wanted to see that, and that was actually on another one of these that I made before this one, just to test this one first. I didn't have the horns on and everything, and it took about 3 days to dry, and I did about 4 drops of resin to 1 ounce. I just did one little inside coat, and it took forever. I was worried about it. I've also, instead of trying, when I was out deployed in the Middle East and I had access to resin, I tried using duct tape instead of fiberglass. You don't want to use that because essentially the resin for some reason didn't want to bond to the duct tape. And so when I left the model in the 130-degree sun for a couple days and I came back to it, I picked it up and it just kind of crumbled in my hands and it was still wet. I'm like, geez, never doing duct tape again.
If you've got resin that isn't curing very well, you can put a heat lamp on it.
You could do that. When I was working on my Lego head that I've had here at this con, you can probably see me sitting around in a creepy alleyway or something like that here. The resin, I literally applied the resin to the Lego head about a couple days ago, and it still wasn't curing because of the cold weather we've been having. So essentially what I did was when I was driving over here yesterday in the 45-degree weather, I had the heat all the way up in my car to let this thing dry. I'd advise against doing that because I was driving buzzed on the way here. So I tell you everything out of personal experience, and even it's recent personal experience. You could add a heat lamp. You could even put it in the sun, I found. I mean, even if it's a cold day, just put it in the sun as long as there's light going onto it. So.
I've even seen people who go to Goodwill and get an old oven.
Oh, really?
Put it outside, and it's just for that. Don't put it in your food oven.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't want to ever do it in my oven. I kind of just discarded that idea. That's a good idea, though. I might have to put a Goodwill. I've heard of people doing that also with plastic forming, but that's another stain.
You just have to run a 230 extension cord out there.
Yeah. I don't know if my neighbors would like it or not. They're really high on stuff like that. Now that we've gotten through all the dangers of resin, the applications of resin, who wants to try eating some resin? Anybody? Anybody?
For $1.
$1. I can give you $1. I guarantee you this is safe to eat. I'll even try a little bit too. You want to try it? Okay, come on over here.
Tree resin?
Yeah.
Ah,
yeah.
maple syrup, yeah.
Ye old resin, that's what I like to call it.
Ah.
So, yeah. I mean, this is all synthetic resins. I mean, originally with like maple syrup and stuff like that. I don't know how I'm going to get that in there.
This could get messy.
Nope. Nope.
This could get
Just
messy.
open your mouth.
Okay. Well, yeah, this is actually blueberry maple syrup that I got at the dollar store this morning, just to shock you all kind of with it, because I was like, okay, wait for it, it's gonna be quiet and awkward when that happens, but essentially you got.
Somebody has an allergic reaction to blueberries.
Oh, I would feel so terrible. I would feel so terrible. There's also another type of resin that's in a lot of foods that you eat. It's corn syrup. It's a refined syrupy substance that comes out of a corn, and it essentially is a resin. Any type of syrups that you get out of anything in nature is essentially a resin. You've got frankincense, which is a type of tree resin that's used for burning, for scents and stuff like that. You have, of course, maple syrups. You have honey, anything like that. And I've never tried mixing catalyst with any of that yet, but if I do, I'll post it to my Furfinity account. And, we'll see then.
Tastiest blank ever.
We can do an experiment right here. We can
It
mix
looks
some catalyst.
amazing, but for some reason ants keep crawling all over it.
Oh yeah. We can try it right now. We can try to experiment just to see what it does. And let's see, 1,
Explodes.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 5 mouse. And we'll just sit this, stir it. Let's see what it does a little bit. I don't care if the spoon gets wasted. It's actually making the consistency of how this looks when you add callus to it. And I can smell the blueberries. Don't breathe this. That'll.
What actually is the catalyst?
That's a good idea, yeah. I should probably put this in another one. We're gonna have the Alien movie effect where it's melting through all the layers, you know. We'll see what that does later.
So your hardener, was that the methyl ethyl ketone, or is that something totally different?
Let's see what this stuff is. Burns when swallowed. Catalyst for polyester resin to keep out of reach of children. Methyl ethyl ketone.
Okay.
Peroxide, yeah.
Do not mix with pancakes, Aaron.
Oh shoot! What the? Yeah.
Now, is that also the stuff that you have to exclude oxygen from in order for it to cure?
I've never had to do that. You can do that. That's with like that pressure chamber I stated earlier. You could pump it all out of there. But that's if you want to get a really clean casting. I've never had to do it. Ever had to do it myself just because I really didn't care that much. I've never done anything like eyes. You can use it for like casting fursuit eyes. Some people do the glass colored eyes. They paint the backing of it so they bowed out. You can also do clear claws, clear. If you want to get really crazy, you could probably try to make like ice sculpture weapons or something like that. I mean, I've seen people do that for cosplay. They said it took forever for them to do that.
Probably dilute UV reactive paint in there too. So you'd have like a semi-transparent UV reactive.
You could do that. I usually, for that, I would suggest using acrylic sheeting though, because that's already got that in there. And if it catches light, it'll glow. And stuff like that. At nighttime, it can glow. If you spray a light coat of something, it'll make it glow in the dark. So, essentially, you can mix things in resin too. There's dyes you can pick up. So if you get that clear resin, you can make it blue or red or green, whichever color you fancy. You can make a rainbow color. I've always wanted to make like a rainbow colored rectangle cube like that, just as a paperweight, just because it's fun. You can also put bugs in it. You've probably seen those in novelty shops where they have like a scorpion trapped under a little glass thing. It's actually the resin in there. And really, you could do a lot of stuff with this, not just repairing boats, costuming, doing cars. You can, one time when I used to live in a dormitory at one of the places I used to work at, I stopped ants coming in. I just poured like a little thing of resin along the doorway wall, and ants stopped coming through because it hardened there. So it's really up to your imagination what you want to use this stuff with, and using common sense to keep yourself protected. I mean, like I said earlier, you really don't need this. This is for painting. I just figured I'd wear this because it looks cool. But you could wear this. You can get a half one of these. You can just wear, like I said, the shirt that keeps you don't really care about. You know what I mean? As long as you don't get it on you or in you, you should be good when working with this stuff. I mean, you can go all out and get like a crazy like gas mask respirator, or you can just use one of these. I personally don't like these myself because it fogs up my glasses. So usually I don't really wear anything, which is kind of bad.
Okay, vapor blocking.
Yeah, that can work. Definitely could work. Usually you can get these for about like $1 or $2 over at Home Depot. The gloves you can get, as long as you're not allergic to the gloves, because most people are allergic to latex, you can go with the polystyrene gloves, I think these are.
Nitrile?
Nitrile, that's what they are, yeah. A lot of people aren't allergic to this. Also, try looking to see if you're allergic to stuff, because I don't know if people are allergic to the smooth-on stuff. They actually offer classes in Pennsylvania. If you ever want to try looking them up on their website, they It's for about like $600. They have like a couple days where you literally go through different stages of casting and molding stuff.
Way in advance.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And really, you could apply it to anything. Like if
The Smooth On Factory is a very cool place to visit. If you drop in and you ask them a question, they kind of like, hey, you need to talk to John. He's doing that at home too. And they go and they get John and bring him up and you sit there and BS for an hour.
So that's really over. I've explained everything I've got right here. Let's see if this is doing anything. Not really. It's coagulating on top, making little cool warps and warp patterns. So if anybody's got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I love questions. You can have me here asking me questions for the whole day if you want. They'll permit me, so
I've got a question. So this might, so I've probably learned more in this panel than any other panel I've been to, so thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I've done some casting, but it was a completely different method, so I kind of want to try and understand the approach you use.
Mhm.
I had done, so I like your idea of 3D modeling.
Okay.
I'd like to know more about that. But, I had done a clay model covered in plaster,
Okay.
plaster sheets.
Yeah.
As a mother mold, I guess.
Mhm.
And then I had painted silicone onto, I guess I'm telling it out of order, but silicone onto the clay and then the mother mold on that. So you were talking about, you mentioned having like a hard shell, for example, for the head or for some pure
Correct.
molds. How do you actually get to your silicone molds, though?
Essentially what you do is you do it off in partitionings of it. I'm sorry, I didn't explain that earlier. What you do is, like, let's say you have this laying on its side here. You've hardened a layer of fiberglass matting like this, so it sticks out flat. And then essentially that'll create kind of like a dam or reservoir for when you pour more fiberglass on the top here. So essentially when that dries, you can flip it over, add another layer of the latex or silicone, if you want to use either one of them, on that, that barrier you have there. And just add another thing of fiberglass matting on top of that after that dries, and then cover that. So when it's done and dry, you can literally just peel it off, and then you have the two dummy external molds out there. And so when you want to actually cast something out of, let's say this, you can put those around this mold here. It'll keep it in its shape. You can pour your stuff. You can slush cast if you want, or you pour the plastic inside and slush it around. Or if you just want to fill up the whole thing and do one large solid block, you can just keep pouring it in layer by layer by layer after it cures. And then you can take that off, and then you peel this off, and voila, you have your casting. So
Get the slush casting with the 45D.
you can do that. That's actually what they recommend it for on here. You could also do it with just the basic pouring. I've seen people do it online with slush casting, and they always prefer that. So I've never used anything else aside from the 45D. I usually got these large containers here because it's better to buy those. You get better bang for your buck instead of just getting these. And with these, you can actually use a paint stirrer or any other type of stirrer to really get it out of there. And
Go to
use
the
the
factory and
most.
see the 55-gallon drums.
Oh man, I wish I could afford one of those.
This is 65D slush cast.
Oh, okay, okay. I was going to ask you about that because it looks plastic cast. So.
Yes. In a rebound mold.
Okay. Oh, this looks very nice.
Feather light years.
Okay.
Speaking of bang for buck,
Yeah.
what are the different prices for what you've got there? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh, I know these are, like I said, $30 to $40. Sometimes they have them on sale for some reason at Walmart. I don't understand why, but usually they're about $40 or $38 to $40. You can get them at AutoZone as well. You can get them. You can't get them at Target. I've gone around Target and grumbled, why the heck don't they have automotive repair stuff here? You know. But that's really places you can get them. Any automotive repair store or Walmart or online too. I mean, I prefer to get it in person because you don't have to pay shipping costs. The smooth on stuff you're gonna have to buy online. Usually for the large couple gallons of this stuff here, it's gonna be generally about over $130. It's worth it, but then again, you have to weigh costs because you can still go to, like, let's say Joann Fabrics or Michael's, and you can get the brush-on silicone. I believe it was you who used it, or you who mentioned it. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can get the brush on silicone. I've actually never really used that. I've heard good things about it. I just tried going with the smooth on stuff because there were more video tutorials on YouTube about it. This stuff here you can get about like, I got this for $5 on sale at AutoZone. I don't know how much this is, my girlfriend bought it, so. The paper for the Peppercura, you can basically get it for about $5 at Walmart for about 100 sheets or so. And the Fiberglass program, as I discussed in my previous program yesterday, you can get it online for free. I had business cards that I was giving out to everybody that actually had a site for this on here. If you see me walking around the con in my business suit and Lego head, I'll be happy to give you one. Essentially, you get Fiberglass for free. It's that 3D modeling program. You can take any 3D model, print it out via different sheets, and assemble it like a puzzle. And then you add whatever you want to do with it.
Totally do the claws for that too. Or at least wear yellow gloves and walk around all day.
I did that once. I just couldn't get doorknobs. You know? It's like, I'm stuck here. I'm trapped. I can't say anything because I do that costume without any vocals. So it's Lego Man telling no tales.
Use tool dip on the bottom of the claw.
Oh, good do that.
Gives you some grip.
Could do that. We could talk about that later if you want.
I think Walmart probably sells it over Target mainly because a lot of Walmarts usually have at least like a minor vehicle repair place inside that Walmart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, TLE or whatever.
They usually have it with the car dent repair stuff
Yeah.
next to the polishing and car like decals and stuff. You know where they got the mariachi skulls and stuff like that. They have that there. This here is plastic paste. Essentially, when I described making the external dummy molds, you don't really want to use this for it. According to Smooth On, they probably just want you to buy their stuff. But they want you to try using this stuff. And I used it once. I actually really liked it with my mold. I don't have it here at the moment. I forgot to bring it. But it worked great. Let's see here. Like I said, this you can get for like $1 or $2 Walmart, anywhere else. This is about like $4 at either Walmart or anywhere else you can buy it. Really, I've seen it everywhere. The plastic wrap cloths, you can search around for these. Usually they can go for $1 to $3. Go for the $1 ones. It's plastic. Who cares? You can reuse it. You know. For paint, basically things you can apply resin and stuff to or Bondo to the outside. You can get these putty knives. They're like $1. But you can still go to Home Depot and you can literally go to the paint section and get the paint sticks for free. Like literally, I go to Home Depot every time. I grab half of the bucket, stick it in my coat, and walk off with it. So they allow it. It's free. Who cares, you know? And I said like these are about $1-ish. Really, you could spend as much as you want on this. I would suggest going as low as you can and not spending too much because you can always come back to this stuff later if you're financially stripped and you can apply it. You could fix it up if you want. You could remake it if you want. I mean, it's really what you got to do and work on your budget with. So, any more questions? I could be here all day.
Did you have to use a mold release with the plastic paste on the rebound?
You can. Basically, that's another thing I forgot to mention. When I was making this, I did not use a mold release. It took me about a half hour to pry this thing off of there. You can use the really expensive mold releases. You can get like Joanne Fabrics or like it on the website, which is even more expensive, or you can just use some cooking spray and spray it, and just to do a thin layer of that, it'll come right off. So as long as you grease it up, you know, it'll be fine. Just a little bit, not over greasing
I
it.
found out that the shell shock in Smooth On cells actually adheres to silicone.
Really?
I tried making a mother mold out of it, and I had to break it up with a hammer to get it off.
Okay, then don't use that. Definitely don't use that. Shoot, that's a good point. I'm gonna have to remember that.
Will the cooking spray break down the silicone? Or?
If you do a really light spray, you don't just like go crazy with it. Don't go Jet Set Radio Future on it. Just like one little quick, and that's really about it. You really don't need that much of it. And really with anything with that type of stuff, with mold releases in general. I've worked in a machine shop when I was younger, and we used a metal mold release on some type of plastics, and it sometimes adhered and burnt the plastic and stuff because it was a hot mold for the press and everything. So I would just always use a little bit. Use everything in moderation, essentially. I mean, when you make a mold like this, you don't need to keep pouring and pouring it on as it drips off onto the table and funnels down to the floor. What you could do is you could take some painter's tape and create a reservoir around the sides of it, like in a box. So it just kind of molds up there, and once that's done, that's fine. Because I mean, once you get that done, you can still pull it off, kind of like how this was, you know. So
Smooth On Styvex is wonderful stuff.
really,
Yes, you mix it in with the silicone, it becomes like peanut butter.
That's the thickener agent. Actually, I have some of that, but I don't think I brought it. Yeah, I did not bring it. With the getting smooth on off your hands though, when it's like in this two-part forms, that can be really sticky. Just use paper towels, as many as you can, and don't be afraid to use them just to get them off. So I've had them stuck to my hands, and one time I was walking around the whole day with a piece of smooth on that was wet, stuck to my elbow, bumping into things and leaving little residual parts of the day. So situational awareness, essentially, that's what you gotta have. You got something?
I came in a little late. Did you already go over things like slush casting? And
Slush
stuff?
casting, I could go over that again if you'd like.
Okay, cool.
Essentially what you do is you get your mold here. Essentially this was the mold for it. I made it out of the resin, the fiberglass, the Bondo, smooth Bondo, made it like this, how it is. Then it made its mold, and then what you do is you make a two-part external cast mold, or a dummy mold for it. And what you do is you take an external resin or something like that. You basically make a reservoir with the fiberglass matting along here. So then you add your resin and some more fiberglass matting, so it hardens on this one side. This side is still bare. You flip it over. After it's hardened, you do another layer of the smooth-on latex. So it has a thin line right here on that reservoir. Make another reservoir out of this atop that, so it sandwiches the latex inside the middle, and this layer again, and then you have your two-part external dummy mold, which you can pull off, have this here, and then you can apply them back together when you want to make that cast, pour it in there, slush cast it around with whatever plastic you want, and then, take it off there after that. So it's a little tricky, but once you get it down, it's easy. Then you can always invert your molds if you want to make a mirror of it too, so you can just, if you have like one side of, like say you're making like a sword or something like that, and just make one side of it, you can flip that over, make a casting of that with using some resin and a thin layer of latex after you have some of the stuff, I just forgot the name of it. I wasn't rebound, it was, you spray it, pull it off, so it doesn't stick. The mold release, sorry, I keep forgetting that name. You put the mold release on it, then you do that layering of it, you just pull it off, and you have two sides of the mold, so you essentially have a mirror of each side, which can save you a lot of money if you don't want to sculpt the whole thing and take the time to do that. Mirroring stuff in molding and casting is a great technique to learn. I wish I had more experience with it, because I just really make a whole thing like this. I mirror it on the computer, then I make it in real life, and then that's how I do it. I've never really had to mirror anything yet, so I would like to try that though. I'm still learning. Been doing this for about 4 years, still learning. You always learn. Just keep an open mind, situational awareness. You can always figure stuff out.
A lot of stuff I see, including this guy, they modeled it in clay, and then they slush casted it with some form of like latex and everything like that. And usually at that point they didn't really care what happened to the clay, and they just like pulled it off, and they got the resin in and stuff.
Yeah. Clay is more of a used for one-time castings, because like you said, they don't really care about what happens to it afterwards, With the fiberglass and stuff like that, this is for making repeated castings of multiple stuff. Like let's say if I wanted to make this thing for some reason over and over and over again, I could do it, but just because this is hard, if this mold breaks at all, hopefully it won't ever, like if it gets in the cold and starts breaking, I've never had a problem with that though, but I could just pour some more onto here and remake it, just keep going with it. Basically, if you're mass producing stuff, this is great for this. I mean, if you ever want to get into selling stuff on Etsy or other places where you can just sell stuff in mass, definitely use fiberglass base molds and stuff like that, because then you can just keep going. I mean, you can even, if you're smart enough, if you can figure it out, you can try to figure out ways to make dummy molds that you can cast from and make other things, and you can even start making your own stuff. Like, let's say you want to make certain patterns you want to cast, you can potentially make those and keep going with that. So, any more questions?
Come on. How did you get the model for your head?
Which one?
Well, for the head model that you have.
Oh, this. This I use a program called Blender, and essentially it's a freeware 3D rendering program on the internet. And what you can do is essentially I just took a square, and then I made it have more faces and more faces. Faces are the flat surfaces. Like let's say this is the square that I had. This is a face. This is the face. Essentially each side. Essentially. I multiplied the sides to it, and then I figured out the size of my head, and I scaled it basically that size on the computer, and then I essentially just shaped it into a general shape of my head, so that when I put this on, I can literally, it'll fit snugly, and I'll probably suffocate when I have it on my head too long, so.
So you took some tape measurements of your head and scaled like a stock head model?
Correct. Essentially, what you got to do is go into converting measurement units there. I believe one blender unit, which is like one little square, is equal to an inch or a couple millimeters short of an inch. But you could also play around in the settings with that. You can literally set it up so you can scale it whatever you want to. So, you got a question?
And more of a thing. I know that 16 Maya units equals a foot in compared to a real scale, but Maya units are like any 3D unit is kind of yeah, because like they're not intended to be comprised to they're meant to be compared to each other, not to like real world scale. So in the end, it usually comes down to you kind of have to like figure it out a little bit. But like I know everyone compares Maya units to Unreal, since Unreal does have a true real-world scale. Unreal units is 16 equal a foot, so that's you can convert Maya units to Unreal, and that makes it easier for me.
That's a good point to bring up. When we put models in the Fiberglass program, when you're scaling them, a lot of people, when they make their own models, they scale them to letter sizes. Because Fiberglass scales to paper sizes. It doesn't scale to actual sizes and measurement units, as like he stated. You know, it's all in the program's own protocol's idea of how measurements are made up that makes the logic of the program work. So you can say that it has X amount of depth and Y amount of width and Z amount of height, but in reality, in the program itself, it's just like, oh, derp, 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 it makes sense to me, I'm Fiberglass, you know. And so then when you print it out, it's like, oh, this is just about an inch taller or an inch wider or whatever than what you want it to be. And so then you got to play around with it. A lot of it's trial and error if you're starting from scratch. I know there's a lot of people like the 405th, I believe, they do Stormtrooper armor and stuff like that. They're really good on giving you tutorials on how to make stuff just from scratch. Me personally, I kind of look at them and I just fussed around and figured it out myself just because I'm that kind of person. And this is after a while. I literally, to make this model for my Lego head, I literally started out by rendering a cylinder, which is this part here, and then I mirrored it so that when I'm working on something up here, it was modeling itself down here. And then I just would take the edges and shorten them so that they would make these different layers here on the curve. And then I would just I made this part here by pulling it out a little more, pulling it out like that, and then cut it out like that, and that's it. And then down here, I actually didn't finish this one because this was just the test model to see for sizing in real life. I thought this model actually would fit my head on the scaling that it is. So I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, I'll print it out, it'll all be fine. And it comes out, it's smaller than I wanted it to be. So that's an example of that there. Scaling, yeah, you just really gotta play around with it and figure it out. Once you get it down, though, you'll have it. You got a question?
Speaking of scaling there, when you're casting, how do you deal with shrinkage?
Shrinkage, I've actually never had a problem with shrinkage. The most problem I've had is warping. I saw that. Usually I do it when it's warmer out. Like when it's cold, it's just like, okay, I don't want to worry about shrinkage, so I'll just wait till it's warmer out, you know. So, and usually it's always like overcast molds too. I've never had to do anything under it where I'm doing all the sides of it. I usually wait. With this, I've learned just to do one side, just the top. I poured the latex onto it, and it would drip down in any case, and luckily because of fluid dynamics. And I just like saying that word. So it fixed it for me. But if I was to do something like this, with making a mold out of it, I would do it part by part. I would start with the face, with the reservoir on each side. I would pour it around, I'd have a reservoir around the eyes, around the edges that I didn't want. And so I get the face done first, and then I would put that reservoir edging here as well, get this top side. I would do the horns completely separate from the thing, so I could just cast those later and apply them to the next mold, and the mold casting. And then I get the back, and that's really how I do it, with just basically a reservoir along the edges. And it would take some time, because I'd have to wait for all that to dry after I do layer upon layer and layer, and then that's how that would be. So, you guys can come on in if you want.
I noticed you didn't mention it, but keying your molds, put them back together. If you do them piece by piece, if you do one half and the other, you need some way for them to stick together and line up.
Yeah, you can do that too. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that because I really haven't done it too much with the doing the outside molds. Like literally, I just poured stuff on there, and it luckily for me worked. I've never had to mirror anything or do anything as crazy as this because I do small molding and stuff like that for small stuff like this, little crystal jewels and stuff like that recently. But with keying, what you do is, let's say you got this mold back on here, and what it does is, what you do is you add little lumps on here so that the outer exterior dummy mold will adhere to it, so that it won't slide around, and it'll basically allow it to be work better with it, so that it doesn't warp. It just basically keeps it in place so it doesn't warp underneath it, you know. So let's say for some reason the resin wants to go into that, the latex wants to go into that shrinkage that you mentioned. It'll try pulling this way, but it'll have those little nubs there, so it'll just keep it there locked in place. That's how the theory goes for that.
Latex shrinks.
Yeah, it can. It can. I just never had that problem.
And Warren, keep your latex away from your silicone.
I've never mixed those two together. How does that go?
If you mix up your silicone, look at it in the cup. It's going to be that way forever if it touches latex.
Really?
It never cures. Because latex usually has sulfur in it, so you can vulcanize it. And a lot of modeling clays have sulfur.
Okay.
And they will inhibit silicone from curing it.
Really?
I mean, it's just like you never mixed it. It just stays permanently liquid. It's ruined.
Oh, geez. That's actually a very valid point.
Yes, if you do modeling with clay and go to put silicone over it, use plastiline. I use Jolly King. That's a very soft one. I just got a bunch of NSP and Chivant from a place called Factor2.com. They had a fire sale where they were selling 2-pound bricks for $2.50. I bought them out. There's also a company called Fiberglass, spelled with a T on the end, online, www.fiberglass.com. And they sell the industrial super hard clay that they use for doing mock-ups of car bodies. You basically carve it, you don't shape it. And if you have to do anything like add more, you have to use a heat gun to do it.
Yeah. You could also, if you don't have a, that's a good mention of a heat gun. If you, it just reminded me of one way how I helped cure this thing because it was cold when I did this. I essentially got a cardboard box, cut a hole in it, and stuck a heat gun in there. With it being this far away from the heat guns, that's how I got this to cure really fast. That's why it's also kind of shrink. Actually, you know what? I guess there is an example of shrinkage right there. You got a question?
I do have a question on heat guns.
Okay.
Can you reshape resin after it's cured?
You can actually. I did have a bit of a warpage right here when I did cast this the first time with applied the first layer of resin to it. So what I did was I took my heat gun, put it on this high heat setting, and I just heated this up. And the fiberglass and the resin will actually bend after you heat it up for a little bit. So you can actually kind of reshape it. The more layers you add to it, though, the harder it will be to do that. So if you get to be about like a ½ inch thick, it's generally going to take a lot of heat for a while to actually bend it. It's going to take some force and you might end up cracking it. So I would advise
And wear gloves so you don't burn yourself.
Yeah, that too. That too. I luckily don't have any burnt gloves. I got hot glue burns all over my hands, but that's another story.
Well, keep in mind that faux fur is plastic, so that's going to melt all the fur on the...
I'm thinking of it for first.
Okay.
That brings up an interesting point also. The 45D, does that stick to itself?
It can actually. I've done once you do like once it cures, you can put another layer of it on there. Just make sure that it's clean. You don't got any dust particles or layering of dust on there. Generally, what I do is I just wash it.
Okay. The 65D does not.
Really?
Yes. Unless if you pour it into a mold, unless it's mechanically locked, it will separate. You can literally pop the next layer out.
Oh shoot. I mean, I never had to go back on any of these molds because I just was happy with them. So that's a good point. I'm still learning, like I said. But, so you said that's a 65D that does that?
65D.
Okay. Let's see. This is the.
It gets a little bit better grip if you do another layer immediately. While the first layer is still a little tacky, then sometimes it does crack. But if you let it completely cure and then put another layer in, another roll later, it'll just pop right out.
I don't hear that many good things about the 65D. I mean, every time I hear about it, it's like, okay, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, then you mention that.
Well, it starts very thin and it's good for rotational casting.
Okay.
Like Kitty here, the mold is basically a ball. I plug the end and I pour it in and I just sit there for 5 minutes just rotating and rolling it around.
Okay.
Letting it completely coat the inside. You don't have to spread it or anything. Stay. She gets that way.
Being a typical cat.
Yep.
So how is our maple syrup resin?
Oh,
set
that's
up?
a good point. Let's see here. It's still, I can see the catalyst kind of like catching the light at the top, making a little like psychedelic pattern.
Right.
So I don't think it does anything.
Okay.
Probably not safe to eat anymore.
Yeah, and it's really pungent with the odor now, so I'm not going to do that.
For science!
Science!
Forever
Really, that's all I got. If you guys got any more questions at all, or want to share any stories about working with resins or not, I know this guy is very knowledgeable. I appreciate it. I'll be here at the whole con if everyone has any questions at all. You'll see me walk around with a suit like that. Oh, you got something?
Yeah, I remember I showed you the hair to my Lego head.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a rush to get it done by Otakon, and so what I came up with is soaking craft foam with fiberglass, and it took a long time. And I carved each and every little lock of hair onto it was ridiculous. Like, I needed to make a solid snap-on, snap-off piece of hair for the head, but the best I could come up with was what Jess suggested was soaking the craft foam with Bondo. So, and it came out uneven, as you can imagine, but it was just enough for the con. Like, any better idea?
What you could do with that is, for the snap-off piece of the Lego, I would advise just doing that of EVA foam. You can carve it like that. Anything like that general, when you get something big on your head, I would advise against it, by making it out of resin, essentially. Like this thing.
It's very heavy.
This is, like I said, this is 8 pounds. It can tire you out. Essentially, if it's too heavy for your head or too heavy for your neck, I believe there's like a ratio that it takes for your amount of poundage per pressure for your neck to snap. Actually, so
12
I would
pounds.
advise putting a certain amount of over about 10 pounds over your head. I would
Fair,
essentially.
though. If that was actually made out of metal and ivory, it would weigh significantly more.
Really, that makes sense. I don't know. I just get wary about stuff like that.
Look at people in third world countries carrying 80 pounds on their head.
Yes, you've seen the video of the guy stacking like almost 100 bricks on top of his head by throwing them up and then catching them with his head.
Yeah.
All I can say is what?
Yes.
What?
Yes, I think I've seen that.
Oh, shoot.
While standing in a boat, Noah, just rocking, and he's just like
What?
stacking
What?
bricks on top of his head.
I call hacks on that. Oh, shoot. I would suggest using EVA foam for any large, wide out pieces of let's say you had your hair like that. EVA foam. And don't put any resin on it. Just seal it right and then paint it, and it could look good. So that's what I would suggest with that. EVA foam is essentially it's craft foam. It's a little thicker. You can find it sold at Walmart for about $20 for 5 sheets. It's essentially that stuff you put on the floor for mats at the gym and stuff like that.
The black microcell?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They have it at Harbor Freight right now. $20 for 8 pieces. You buy 2 packs of it. It's on sale for 33%.
I can get you a discount. I work there.
Awesome. I had examples of that in my previous panel, but if anybody attended that. But I also, if you ever see me walk around with a Lego head, I actually have the top part of it made out of that, so I can show you that if you want to. So, anything else? Yeah.
I'm looking to cast like a juniper branch inside of a glass gin bottle.
Oh, okay.
I've never really done any casting before, but I've got a jar of resin and some hardener for it.
Okay.
But, I
Is
don't
it-
really know where to go from
Is it this type or is it an acrylic resin?
It's acrylic.
Okay, this is the clear type. Do you want bubbles in it, or do you want it just to be totally solid at all?
I was hoping for it to be solid, yeah.
Totally solid. Okay, what you're going to need to do is, as I stated earlier, you could get, as long as you can get some pressure in there, it'll force the bottles out. Like put it in, let's say, a pressure chamber. You can get kind of like a metal paint mixing container, like at Harbor Freight. Those are expensive though. You could also heat it up. You could heat up the resin before you pour it. You take a heat gun, just kind of go back and forth, kind of slow, kind of fast, just enough so you don't catch any fumes that are too crazy coming off of it. Make sure you're wearing the something to cover your mouth and nose with, respiratory stuff, so that you don't breathe in any of those fumes, because the acrylic resin actually is a little bit more toxic than that, from what I've heard. When I worked with both, I still get that buzz that I don't really want, but you know, it's it's very pungent, very toxic. So just kind of heat it up before you pour it in. Try to pour it in as thin as you can. That meaning I'll demonstrate for you. Don't make it like kind of just globbed in like that. Kind of get it so it has a thin strand with as little much oxygen as it can, like that, because that'll keep oxygen bubbles from accumulating inside of there. So that's the best way to get rid of that, unless you don't want to spend a lot of money on pressure chambering it. So.
Again, goodwill is your friend. Pressure cookers can make good gassing pots.
Really? I never thought of a pressure cooker. That works. What do you got?
I generally don't talk in soup, but I have to mention this. That dust mask will not save you from the fumes from the stuff you're mixing. You have to use a respirator.
Yeah, I've got a paint respirator.
You have to use a double filter respirator. You can't wear that flimsy little dollar store dust mask. It will not save you.
Okay.
There are masks.
And I don't generally talk in soup, but this is really dangerous stuff.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I appreciate you breaking
The
silence.
point he was trying to make is they actually do make double layer respirators
Well, they have-
designed like that.
Right, there's
But generally, they don't.
I just
You
was using
can't
this
just
as
go
an
buy any
example.
dust mask and have it help.
Look
You
for
have
the
one,
ones that
the
say
one you
volatile
painted green,
organic
remember, for
compounds.
the chromium
Yeah.
You
thing
got,
you
you know,
did?
3M makes them, they're like $30, $40.
But
They
you can't
last
just
a
buy
while.
any
They're nice.
dollar one. You have
Canister
to
mask.